So it's almost been 4 months since the release of Master Duel, which means it's now been almost 4 months of getting ass pounded by VFD, along with Herald, Eldritch, TriBrigade, and all that other bullshit. So I think we can all agree by now, with all this bullshit floating around, that it's time for a ban list. Alright, so before we get into the predictions, there's going to be 4 quick things I have to note. First of all, this is a prediction, not a wish list. I have to point this out every single time I do one of these videos because for some reason I get tons of angry comments being like, why do you want these cards banned? Why are you trying to get these cards banned? I'm not. That's not the point of this video at all. The point of this video is to predict what is already probably going to be banned. It's probably likely that Konami's already got like their own ban list in the already made up anyway. So it's got nothing to do with me. I'm not trying to get these cards banned. I don't want these cards banned. I'm just predicting what's likely to be on the ban list when it does eventually come. Second thing to note is the predictions on this list are mostly going to be based off of the already live TCG/OTG ban list. This is because those ban lists are basically what the Master Duel ban list is already based off of, so it's likely that they'll just continue to base their ban list off of the ban list that already exists. I'm not saying that every single card that's going to be banned OTG/TCG is going to be banned in Master Duel and vice versa, but it's just going to be a high chance that the ban list is going to be significantly impacted by those lists. Third thing to note is that Master Duel is an online card game with its own ranked ladder. This means it's probably going to be balanced a little bit differently to how it would be balanced if it was just based off of tournaments or just based off of what is considered meta. The idea is to try to keep the game as healthy as possible, so if the ranked ladder has something very unhealthy going on in it, something like a really dumb FTK that just is played over and over and over, but isn't necessarily a top tier deck or popping off in tournaments, that deck is likely to be hit. Also, if there's a deck that just has absurd popularity, so something that's like 90% of the decks on the ladder is just this one deck, even if it's not necessarily the best deck in the game or even top tier, it's likely Konami would do something about it as well. This is something that happened in Duel Links a long time ago when Dark Magician ended up becoming absurdly popular. Konami decided to hit it, and I think they may take that kind of mindset into Master Duel as well and be banning stuff that's just absurdly popular if it does ever happen. And very last thing to note, if you enjoy this kind of content, want to see more of it, or just find it useful in any way, make sure to let me know by leaving a like on today's video and considering subscribing to the channel down below, especially if you're a frequent visitor of the channel and still haven't subscribed yet. Come on guys, do me a solid. I am trying to get to 100k by the end of the year, so I really appreciate every sub I can get. Alright, let's get into it. So my very first prediction is not going to be anything to do with the top tier decks or any of the meta stuff, it's going to be purely based off of game health alone. And that is, of course, Banquet FTK. Now I would say there is probably like a 95 to 100% chance that this deck will be getting a severe hit, and I mean severe. This deck will probably be unplayable once the ban list hits. That's because it's an FTK and it's absurdly popular. FTKs are something Konami does not like at all, as they shouldn't. Everyone should at least have a turn to play. If on the very first turn you just kill your opponent before they get their turn to respond, that's probably an issue. And if it's absurdly popular on the ladder, Konami's definitely going to do something about it. Especially considering it actually managed to get second place in an MCS recently, which is very odd. But anyway, yeah, this deck is likely to disappear. What are they going to do to ban it? Well, there's only 2 cards they're going to hit. It's either going to be DD Dynamite, which is the main offender of the deck, as it just nukes your opponent for 1 trillion damage. But it is an SR, so maybe they're more likely to hit Banquet of Millions, which was the other half of the FTK. As if you don't know how this deck works, basically it banishes your opponent's entire extra deck. This card burns you based on the cards banished. So this card or this card, very likely to be banned. Maybe it'll just be a limit 1 or a limit 2 on some of these cards as well, something like that. Either way, this deck will 100% be unplayable once the ban list hits. The next deck I'm going to be predicting bans for is of course the tier 1 deck Drytron. Now Drytron is a bit of an interesting one, as I think there's 3 potential hits for this deck. The first one obviously being Herald, as this is the card that it's what makes the deck absurdly broken. I know it says it's only running 60% of the decks here, but I think that's just further proof that people actually just want this card banned, as the people that are not running this card are not running it because it's just a potential weak option. They're just running it because they want to play Drytron. They don't want to play Herald. Herald just makes this deck so much more boring. It turns Drytron from being an actual cool art type with its own cool boss monster that has its own little interactions and stuff, just being, oh, how can we turbo out Herald and get as many fairies in hand as possible? It's really cringe, it makes the game very unfun, and it's probably the main offender of the deck. Whether or not Konami actually hits this card though, it's a bit of a toss-up, as it's not currently hit on both OCG or TCG ban lists, meaning it would have to be like a Master Duel specific ban, which may not happen. Also, it would probably ruin the entirety of the actual Herald archetype, people that want to play it as its own archetype. But I think it's extremely likely to just, it may go. And if it does go, I don't think this deck needs to be touched at all after that, as this is probably the only main problem. But if this card isn't hit, the other two potential bans are going to be Ava and Benton, which are also some pretty good bans for the deck, as they don't actually affect the Drytron archetype at all, and they do make the deck significantly weaker, as this is the deck's main searcher, and this card is just insanely cringe. And the reason I think these cards are likely to be hit is because on the TCG ban list, they are already hit. As you can see, Ava is currently banned, and you'll see that Benton is currently limited to 1, which is probably fair bans. It's a bit sad for Cyber Angel, but they can get over it. So yeah, I think those two are the cards that are super likely to get banned if this one doesn't get touched, but this card, it's a toss-up, very likely it does hit as well. Next up on the chopping block, we have Zodiac TriBrigade. This deck, I think, has 3 cards that are potentially to be hit. That's because all 3 of these cards are currently either banned or limited on the TCG or the OCG ban list, some of which are actually limited on both. Now, the first card I think they're going to be hitting is Fractal. That's because on the OCG ban list currently, you'll find that Fractal is currently on here at limited to 2, which wouldn't hurt the deck too much, but this hit combined with the other hit would severely hurt the actual deck's consistency, and that is Tenki. Now, Tenki is actually on both ban lists. It's either limited to 2 on the OCG one, or on the TCG one, I think it's actually limited to 1, which would be a very nasty hit for the deck. This limited to 1 with this limited to 2 would severely hurt the consistency of TriBrigade quite a lot. The other main hit that I think is likely for the deck is actually going to be Trident. Now, this card is currently both forbidden in OCG and forbidden in TCG. Now, I'm not sure why it is personally, as I haven't actually played a whole lot of the IRL card game, so this may have absolutely nothing to do with, TriBrigade at all, but the fact that this card is forbidden on both lists kind of gives me a little bit sus that it may be forbidden in the future in Master Duel as well. So those are the 3 hits that may be coming to this deck. So next up in the chopping block is Eldritch. Now, Eldritch is a bit of a hard one for me, as I think there is 2 cards that are very likely to be hit on this, but whether or not that's enough to actually hurt this deck, I don't know. So feel free to leave your opinions in the comments down below on what you think will be hit in Eldritch that would actually hurt this deck enough without just completely killing the deck entirely. So the 2 cards that are very likely to be hit on this, purely because they are featured on the ban list currently IRL, is number 1 is going to be Sanguine. That's because on the OCG ban list, this card is currently limited to 2, so very likely that they'll mimic this and limit this to 2 as well, especially considering this is on the OCG ban list, which is the one that affects the Master Duel ban list the most. The other major ban is, of course, Imperial Order, which is currently limited to 1, but in IRL, it's banned in both TCG and it's also banned in OCG. Banned in OCG, and here it's banned in TCG as well. Very broken card, very cringy floodgate, and I would be very surprised if it survives the next ban list, considering it's banned on both of them. So those are the 2 bans I think are likely for this deck, but I don't think that's enough to actually hurt it, so let me know your thoughts down below on what you think will be hit. Next up, we have probably my favourite deck in Master Duel, if not all of Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment, which is going to be of a shame to see it get hit, but sadly, it is a top tier deck, it is very popular, and that is Prank Kids. Now, Prank Kids, they only need 1 card hit, and it's very likely to happen, because I think on both ban lists this card is already hit, and that is, of course, Prank Kids Meow. This card, getting it hit will mean the actual deck's main starting combo would still work, no problem there, but having any follow-up if you're disrupted, it's just doomed. If your opponent disrupts this card gets removed. On your following turns, you can no longer combo off. Deck dies. So this will be a major hit for the deck, and will be the only card I think will be hit in this list, as I think it's both banned on, let me have a look, I think it's banned on both, not banned, it's limited to 1 on both OCG, and I think it's also on TCG as well. Yeah, on TCG it's also limited to 1. So I think that's the very likely card to be hit. I think it'll be the only card to be hit, and it'll be a very nasty hit to this deck that won't completely kill it, because obviously, like I said, you can still combo off your main starting board. It's just if that board gets disrupted, you can't do it again. And the final deck I think will be receiving hits on the next ban list is, of course, Virtual World. Now, Virtual World has a bit of a similar issue to what Drytron has, where the actual art type itself I don't think will be hit, but there's one particular card in the deck that's not even in the art type that just kind of ruins the whole deck, and that is, of course, True King of all Calamities. The sad thing about this deck is that the actual deck itself isn't broken, it's just this one card. You summon this out, it's way too easy to summon out, and if it's not banned on this ban list, it'll definitely be banned on future ones. It's a card that just stops your opponent playing the game that's this easy to summon. It needs to be gone. It's both forbidden in TCG and in OCG, as you'll see it's banned here, and in this one it's banned here. So, yeah, this card is extremely likely to be banned in the future. If it's not on this list, it'll be on a future one. And I think it should be banned, especially for the sake of Virtual World itself, where the actual deck is a fun deck. It has some cool little interactions, it has some cool little synchros and stuff, but you never get to see any of them, as your opponent is just summoning this on turn 1, and that's it. That's the duel over, then you have to concede. So this card needs to go, and it'll make this deck a lot more healthy, and actually you get to see what the actual Virtual World deck does, without having to rely on this card. Alright guys, that's going to do it for my ban list predictions. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And if you have your own predictions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Laters.
Hey, big brother, can I watch SpongeBob?
Shut up, Mokuba. I'm busy flagging YouTube videos to compensate for the fact that I have an extremely small penis.
Oh.